This is Action News for Monday, March 24th, brought to you by Winn-Dixie. Now, here's John Pruitt.
Good evening. A tornado dipped out of the gray morning skies in northwest Atlanta, cutting a swath of death and destruction from the Perry Homes public housing project all the way to the governor's mansion. 3 persons are dead, more than 100 injured, and a large area has been devastated. The funnel was first sighted about 7 miles west of the airport. The tornado was moving northeast through the heavy line of thunderstorms, moving in the opposite direction. The twister lifted off the ground and moved north-northeast at about 50 miles per hour. Packing winds in excess of 100 miles per hour, the tornado slammed into the Perry Homes public housing project, tearing off roofs, toppling trees, and utility poles. Many of the injured were in that housing project. The twister then lifted up, sideswiping the Inman Railway yards. Several freight cars were tipped over, including rail cars carrying new automobiles. The industrial area near the track suffered heavy damage. Several businesses and factories were knocked flat, and others were heavily damaged. Tractor-trailer trucks were tossed about like toys in the tremendous wind. Still moving northeast, the funnel again lifted off the ground. Hundreds of large trees were snapped in half, many of them falling on homes. The debris trapped dozens of residents. Many victims had to wait hours before rescue workers could cut their way through the blocked streets and highways. The funnel dropped down about a quarter of a mile from the Marietta Boulevard into the Peachtree Battle Road area. Scores of expensive homes were heavily damaged, either by the wind or the falling trees. The twister lifted back into the clouds, moved about 8 miles north, and struck the governor's mansion and the Lake Forest area. The lethal tornado finally dissipated in northern Gwinnett County. The major portion of this newscast will be devoted to coverage of this disaster, and we'll have film reports from each of the devastated areas. But the most immediate problem is finding shelter, food, and clothing for the homeless. The Red Cross and Civil Defense have set up emergency shelters. One of the busiest is in a northeasterly direction. Right here, the governor's mansion, the tornado touched down there and hit the mansion, and it still stands, but it's been torn up pretty badly. Our reporter Jocelyn Dorsey went to the mansion this morning. The first family was still there. Here is her report.
If you ever happened to see the governor's mansion before today, you would never recognize it now. In fact, when the twister hit this morning, the mansion was the only building in the immediate area that suffered the blow. Only one column remained on the front of the building, and extensive structural damage was done to the roof. Some 25 giant oak trees were uprooted around the grounds, and it was enough to make one cry, and that's just what the governor and his wife said they did. But both, thank God, no one was injured. What was it like when you went through?
Well, what it was, we could hear the roar, and one of the securities saw the tornado about 60, 70 feet above the ground before it hit, and it was all over in about 2 minutes. My wife and I rushed to the center of the mansion in order to, where the windows were being blown out, but it was all over in a hurry. You could hear it. I mean, I could hear the roar, but I didn't see it.
What about your son and daughter? Where were they?
Jeff, the 14-year-old, was here, and the other 3 children were not at the mansion when it hit.
Was the mansion so damaged that you can't live in it? Will you still be able to stay here?
We're trying, as you can see, it's raining. The roof is going off the mansion. We have people trying to secure it at the time. We really don't know. We might have to move out this afternoon. I'm trying to stay in constant contact with the legislature. It's still going on. We have to get through tomorrow, and I thought I had all I could handle before then. And we have a lot of areas in the city that are damaged. I'm working with Civil Defense, State Patrol, and the legislature, and trying to secure the mansion. It's just pretty hectic right now.
Almost immediately, cleanup operations around the million-dollar mansion began, with several departments of the State Transportation Office pitching in. More than 10 of the mansion's stately columns were picked up, and many of the damaged trees were being cut down and carried off in an almost army-like brigade of 2-ton dump trucks. Like much of the city, power crews were on the scene trying to repair the damaged lines, and officials say it may be hours before power is restored to the governor's mansion, and even longer before the real cleanup begins. Damage to the governor's mansion has not yet been estimated, but it is sure the Busby family will not be here tonight. And also certain is that this sign in back of us will probably no longer apply. From the governor's mansion, I'm Jocelyn Dorsey for Action News.
Tornadoes do not discriminate. When they hit, it matters not whether buildings or trees or people are in their way. But this morning's storm caused widespread damage in an area where there are lots of buildings and lots of people. Reporters Walt Elder and Jim Hickey covered the Perry Homes housing project.
What residents say sounded like a railroad train touched down in the Perry Homes housing project around 7:30 this morning. Many of the residents say they had no warning.